Welcome. In this video, we're going to discuss the math club problem. So, everyone in this club identifies as a boy or a girl. I'm sure the club would accept you no matter who you are, but for this particular problem, we need two types. So our type is boy and girl. When 10 girls join the club in January, the percentage of boys dropped to 20%. Okay, so it dropped, more girls came in, it was higher, and now it's down to 20%. Then 10 boys joined the club in February, and then, of course, the percentage rose back up, in this particular case, to 40%. It asks, what is the original percentage of boys in this club? We do have a hint to help us out. So the hint says one possible solution, way to get to this percentage, is to use the Singapore bar method, and it suggests a rectangle to be divided by 4s and 5s. So if you're curious about why we might want to use 4s and 5s to divide up a rectangle, well, we're given two numbers in this problem. There's these two percentages of 20% and 40%, and really the problem ends at 40%. So with 40%, you would divide up by 5s if you thought of 40% as 2/5. 2 parts out of 5 parts makes 40%. And then if you worked backwards and then you thought about, okay, then there was 20% boys at some point, you'd say, okay, at that point I want to know how to divide things up. There's a certain amount that's gone. I would want to know how many boys as a percentage of how many girls that 20% left us with. So when we looked at 20% out of 80%, there's 20% boys and 80% girls. That's 1/4. So this is where the divisions of dividing up by 5 and dividing up by 4 are coming from. I'm sure you could draw other grids and other pictures to help you out, but 20 is a good start. So let's open with that. Okay, so here's my grid. It represents the club with some parts boys and some parts girls. And notice that we've divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our 4x5 grid. Now, I'm going to start this problem working from the last number that they gave us, which was 40%. That's where we have a complete picture. And then work backwards from there. And instead of thinking about 10 girls joining and 10 boys joining later on, I'm going to think about we're in February now, and then 10 boys are going to leave, and then 10 girls are going to leave, and that will take us back to the original percentage that we're after in this problem. So let's write out our 3 months. Let's say December, January, and February. Okay, and what do we know about these 3 months? Let's start with February. In February, we know that 40% are boys, and some of the boys leave. When some of the boys leave, it brings us down to 20% boys in January. So let's start in February and let's think about how many parts would be boys. Well, we've got 20 parts in total in our diagram, and 40% are boys. So 40% of 20 is 8. Let's mark in our 8 boys. So we'll write B for boys. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 boys. And the rest are girls. So let's try to think about this problem in terms of a ratio of boys to girls. We start off with the ratio of 8 boys versus 12 girls. Now this doesn't mean exactly 8 boys or exactly 12 girls. It means 8 parts are representing boys and 12 parts are representing girls. We don't know how much one part represents. Does it represent one girl? Does it represent 5 girls? We're not really sure at this point. But we do know that the boys are in this ratio compared to the girls. And then some boys leave. So we would still have the 12 parts girls. But how many parts boys does that correspond to? So we have 20% boys in ratio to 80% girls. So going from the 20 to the 80 is multiplying by 4. So we have 3 parts boys when 10 boys leave. Okay, so what does our diagram look like? Our new diagram should be 3 parts boys, so 1, 2, 3, to 12 parts girls. There's our 12 girls right there, there's our 3 boys. So this first row of boys, they left the club in February. Okay, now when we move towards January, now in January, some of the girls left the club. Actually, the same amount of girls left as boys. So now 10 girls are going to leave. So 10 girls left the club. That's the same amount of girls as boys left. So all of these girls, they left our club. So what is the new ratio of boys to girls? Well, there would be 3 parts boys, and if we count them in the table, there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts girls. So what is the final percentage in December of boys of our club? Well, it's 3 out of 10. So that would give us 30% boys as our final answer. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the next video.